Welcome back to This Week in Energy. And this week we're going to do a little bit of an aside and talk about the war in Iran. But first, WTI is trading at approximately $75 a barrel. Henry Hub is around $2.70 an MCF. WCS is up to $60 a barrel, and AECO is around $1.36 an MCF. The latest Baker Hughes rig count, have the United States at 588 rigs. That's up 1 week on week and up 48 year on year. Canada is at 219 rigs. That's up 15 week on week and over 42 year on year. Now, onto the war in Iran. First, the style of a war gives Iran leverage over Western economies. The world had already understood that the Strait of Hormuz was quite important. What this war has demonstrated is how effectively Iran can turn it into economic leverage, something I don't think they fully realized before. Before the war, roughly 1/5 of global petroleum consumption and 1/5 of global LNG trade passed through the strait. Iran doesn't need to close it permanently. It only needs to make access unpredictable. An intermittent conflict allows Iran to turn shipping risk on and off, injecting volatility into the energy markets and creating higher fuel prices, inflation, and political pressure across the Western economies. At the same time, pauses between escalations allow Iran to avoid sustained infrastructure destruction and what would accompany a continuous full-scale war. Next, we have internal control. Before the war, a significant portion of Iran's population opposed the Islamic Republic, with many pushing for a secular and democratic system. As the bombing continued, anger that was previously directed primarily at the regime has increasingly turned towards the United States and Israel, pushing the local population away from the West. The threat of foreign attack has also allowed the regime to portray dissent as collaboration with the enemy. Iranian authorities have been able to use the war to justify internet restrictions, checkpoints, and accelerated executions and thousands of arrests. The conflict is weakening the United States. To understand this strategy, we need to separate the interests of the Iranian regime from the interests of the Iranian people. Iran's leadership does not face the same accountability for destroyed infrastructure or economic hardship, civilian suffering that a Western democratic government would. It can therefore accept costs that would be politically intolerable in the United States. Iran can launch relatively inexpensive drones and missiles while forcing the United States and its allies to respond with interceptors costing millions of dollars each. A Sahad-style attack drone can cost tens of thousands of dollars. A Patriot interceptor is roughly $4 million US, and the THAAD interceptors are upwards of $12 million apiece. Iran does not have to win the exchange from a military standpoint for the economics to work in its favor. Recent CSIS estimates suggest that the United States has depleted at least 65% of its pre-war Patriot interceptor inventory and at least 38% of its THAAD inventory. The Pentagon itself is now seeking $67 billion to replenish military inventories. That comes on top of an estimated $37.5 billion already spent on the war. That does not represent the full cost of rebuilding all the American weapon inventories over the next several years. The conflict is also imposing a growing political cost. Trump's approval rating had dropped to 34%, statistically matching his lowest ever. Separate polling put his approval of handling Iran at approximately 28%. This is right as the US prepares to head towards midterm elections. I'll leave you with one final thought. If there's something the past 2,000 years have taught us, and at least the past 20 years have reinforced, the Middle East is incredibly resilient, whether you're looking at the Crusades, Afghanistan, Iraq, or now the war in Iran. You can't win by bombing from afar. The anti-West sentiment that has been restarted will last at least a generation. This will push more towards extremism and terrorism. In my view, hornet's nest has been kicked, and the repercussions of this are going to be felt long after the missiles are stop flying. A strategy of supporting the local dissidents may have actually succeeded in toppling the regime, and at a minimum would have continued to destabilize it without the economic cost and depletion of firepower, while we face real threats like China and Russia. Thank you very much for listening.